Hi, and thanks for joining me. In the process of pre-ordering my Kindle version of Robert Jobson's book on Catherine, the Princess of Wales today, I had a chance for a little muse, and I thought about what are my expectations for this new biography. I thought, well, it's only 300 pages or so I don't expect a big weighty work. I'm expecting a bit of feel-good fluff. I'm expecting that there'll be some lovely stories in there that people will relish and enjoy, and I plan to actually review the book on this channel. I did do a review of Robert Jobson's book on King Charles III, and at the time that was really needed. People wanted feel-good stories. They were sick of all the drama with Harry and Meghan. They were sick of all the ugliness. They were grieving Our Late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, and they were just after something that made them feel better and gave them something to cling on to, something that gave them some sort of connection to King Charles III. And it served that purpose. There were lots of lovely stories in that book, and I did do a review on that, like I said, so I'll link that down below in the description box if you want to go and check it out. So yes, fluff. I think it's going to be a bit of feel-good fluff. But then I thought, well, gee, I wish people would tell more stories of what really has happened over the last 3 or 4 years and how things have really taken place. And so I was looking through my notes and I found a little story that I thought I would share with you today. Now, the story I want to share with you today is about Prince William and his very real efforts to actually mend his relationship with Harry. Now, after Harry and Meghan had their last official engagement in the UK and they headed back to Canada, and of course, you know, the Sandringham Summit took place, and then there was the Freedom Flight, and then they ended up in Melodrama-cito. Well, there was a lot of contact between Prince William and Prince Harry. There was real efforts. They were checking in with each other regularly. And Prince William was sort of aware that they had been rather disrespectful and rude to the Queen. He didn't like the way they treated the Queen. There was a lot of resentment in regard to their exit. But what he hoped was that now that they were not working royals, that a lot of the tension would go out of their relationship. He actually hoped that it would sort of provide a space or a way for Harry and him to actually get closer again as brothers, as family members, and not as work colleagues. Well, how do I know all this? Well, it was extensively reported by Valentine Low in the Times, and I made notes about it when it was actually unfolding at the time. And Valentine Low just pretty much lays out what I just told you, that there was real efforts to restore the family relationship between Harry and William. And William wanted to. He wanted to still have a brother. Even though they weren't going to be working royals, he still wanted Harry to be a part of his life. He still wanted Harry to be an uncle to his children. So there were real efforts being made. But that all ended rather abruptly when word got to the palace that they had filmed an Oprah Winfrey interview. Now, word got to the palace in Feb that the Oprah Winfrey interview had been recorded and it was in the can and it was touted for release in early March. And at that point, William could no longer check in. He could no longer have long, heartfelt discussions, which he was having up to that point. He had to cease contact. They couldn't risk it. There was great concern in the palace at the time exactly what was going to be said in that interview. They knew, they had word that Meghan was actually going to sit down with Oprah first and that she was going to say her bit, and then Harry was going to join the interview later. So pretty much what we saw unfold in the actual interview, the palace had the heads up. They knew what was going to happen. Now, there was real concerns from the palace what was going to be said in this interview. Now, they expected a lot of complaints about the grey men because they knew, they'd seen that Meghan tended to cosplay Princess Diana, and so they expected her in her first major interview to cosplay Princess Diana again and sort of imitate her panorama interview with all her complaints about the grey men. And that did pan out. But the real concern was Meghan playing the race card. Now, they sort of expected that because it was the easiest attack that she could possibly make, and so they expected it. They didn't have any fears about any validity she could bring to that argument. They didn't have any fears that she could actually point to any specific sort of occurrences of any proof of any real, racism. They knew that she wouldn't have any. They just knew that instinctively and also just through the knowledge of how the royal family operates. But they knew that she could allude. They knew that she could imply. And that's very, very hard to fight against. Now, of course, it is reasonable that the palace would be fearful of an Oprah Winfrey interview because Oprah Winfrey had form. She'd actually interviewed Sarah, Duchess of York, on several occasions, and it actually turned into a 6-part cringeworthy TV series, Finding Sarah. Now, in that series, Sarah actually shared about her self-inflicted debts. She shared about her endless self-hatred, and also Beatrice and Eugenie were even portrayed crying over the many trials and tribulations of their hapless mother's life. Also, Sarah was really offended that she wasn't invited to Prince William and Catherine's wedding. So, really cringeworthy. They didn't want a repeat of that, understandably. Now, there were also other interviews that produced perils for the royal family. I mentioned before Diana's Panorama interview, but it's interesting that Valentine Low, in one of his many articles, said that despite the fact that we now know that Diana was manipulated and deceived into making that interview, that she did have real regrets after that interview. She really worried about the impact that interview had on her children. Then we've got Prince Charles's interview with Jonathan Dimbleby. Now, Charles was actually initially reluctant to share that he had had an affair with Camilla Parker Bowles, but he decided to be honest. He was talked into being honest that after his marriage had irretrievably broken down, that he resumed his affair with Camilla Parker Bowles. Well, the effect of that admission was immediate and it was devastating. It was so damaging. And it took years and years and years for Prince Charles and the royal family to even start to repair that damage. Camilla Parker Bowles, actually in Angela Levin's book, Camilla, it's described the fallout for poor Camilla. I mean, she really suffered the brunt of that. She had to hide out in her house. Her father came to her defense. Reporters were beating on the windows and on the doors. And that was when that lovely story happened where actually her father answered the door to the reporters and said, "Gentlemen, in this family, we don't kiss and tell," or words to that effect. So they all went away. He was delightful and he was a great support of his daughter. But, interviews for the royal family, they just don't go well. Now, of course, Harry and Meghan have made it very clear to the Queen that they were not coming back. And they wanted to be free to do their own thing. And I think one of the things they wanted to be free to do was actually do this Oprah Winfrey interview. Now, initially, I don't think it was supposed to be so hateful towards the royal family. I think that came later when the reality sort of kicked in after the Queen issued her letter saying that a lot of the patronages and also military appointments that Harry held were going to be removed. And that's when Harry and Meghan sniped back with, the life of service comment that was actually deemed to be a real slap in the face to the Queen, that service was universal. Anyone can have a life of service. Now, there's an interesting quote that Valentine Low gave in this Times article that I've never heard before, and I thought you would be interested too. And it's quoted from the Queen. The Queen was very clear-eyed and was quoted as saying, "Either you work for the royal family or you don't. You don't make the royal family work for you." Now, it's reported also in this article that Oprah actually began wooing Harry and Meghan at least 3 years before. And I've actually said in other videos that on behalf of CNN, there was actually talks about doing an interview, a sort of fluff piece on Meghan's first year as being Duchess of Sussex. But that quickly turned about 3 years later into something much more, which you saw unfold and which you saw air. So 3 years of wooing, 3 years of making Meghan and Harry feel extra, extra special, and even promoting Meghan's clever coffee blends just prior to them sitting down for that interview. It was really sort of pushed that they were great friends, and I'm sure that Harry and Meghan expected that friendship to extend way beyond the actual interview. Now, it is quite impactful, isn't it, that William actually went to great efforts to try and repair that relationship with Harry prior to the Oprah Winfrey interview, and I really don't think a lot of people are aware of it. Now that it's obvious that he has firmly, shut the stable door after the horse bolted and he's padlocked it shut, there tends to be a lot of blame on him. There tends to be sort of this attitude that he's too harsh and too hard, and, it's all due to him that the royal family can't repair and have that sort of family relationship. But it actually isn't due to him. He made real and genuine efforts before Harry and Meghan actually performed the ultimate betrayal. And upon that point, he didn't have any choice. So let me know what you think down below. Do you think Robert Jobson's book will actually address that? Do you think that he will truthfully say that Prince William was making concerted efforts to repair his relationship with Harry and Meghan prior to the Oprah Winfrey interview? I'd be really interested to see if he covers that in his book, because like I said, not a lot of sort of biographies have covered it. And so at least this video will be out there that will actually tell that little tidbit that I'm sure you would have found really interesting. I'll see you again really soon. Bye.